Brian Douglas Wilson was born on June 20th, 1942 in Inglewood, California. His father said that as a baby, he could repeat the melody from When the Caissons Go Rolling Along as the father was singing to him. In high school, Wilson was the quarterback on his local football team and was a cross-country runner in his senior year. He has two brothers, Dennis and Carl, and his father, Murray Wilson, who is a machinist and songwriter. For his 16th birthday, he received a portable 2-track Wollensak tape recorder. He wrote his first all-original melody, loosely based on a Dion and the Belmonts version of When You Wish Upon a Star in 1961. The song was eventually known as Surfer Girl. Wilson enrolled as a psychology major at El Camino Junior College in September of 1960, while simultaneously continuing his musical studies at the community college as well. Wilson's teacher remembered that Wilson, at 17, had demonstrated an above-average understanding of Bach and Beethoven, but he gave Wilson a final grade of C for the course due to incomplete assignments. The Beach Boys were formed in 1961 by Brian Wilson, brothers Carl and Dennis, cousin Mike Love, and friend Al Jardine. They first appeared as a music group in the autumn of 1961, initially under the name The Pendletones. Their first single, Surfing, was a local hit in Los Angeles and reached number 75 on the Billboard Hot 100. The group performed their first major live show at the Ritchie Valens Memorial Dance on New Year's Eve 1961. Wilson and the Beach Boys cut new tracks at Western Recorders in Hollywood, including Surfing Safari and 409. These songs convinced Capitol Records to release the demos as a single. They became a double-sided national hit. The Beach Boys' contract with Candix Records was terminated by Wilson's father when the label ran into money problems. Without the band's knowledge or permission, Candix Records had changed their name to the Beach Boys without their permission. Record sessions for the band's first album, Surfing Safari, took place in Capitol's basement studios in the famous Tower Building. With Gary Usher, Wilson wrote numerous songs patterned after the Teddy Bears, Phil Spector's first band. To focus his efforts on writing and recording, he limited his public appearances with the group to television gigs and local shows. In March, Capitol released the Beach Boys' first top 10 single, Surfing USA, which began their long run of highly successful recording efforts at Western. The Surfing USA album was also a big hit in the US, reaching number 2 on the national sales charts by July. The Beach Boys had become a top-ranked recording and touring band. Surf City was Wilson's first composition to reach the top of the U.S. charts. Wilson's hit with Jan and Dean revitalized their career. Wilson was for the first time officially credited as the Beach Boys producer on the album Surfer Girl, recorded in June and July of 1963 and released that September. He was forced to rejoin the touring life upon David Mark's departure in late 1963. In the meantime, he also produced a set of largely car-oriented tunes for the Beach Boys' fourth album, Lil Deuce Coupe, released in October of 1963. Beach Boys' May 1964 single, I Get Around, was their first U.S. number 1 hit. The group's studio output for this year included the album Shut Down Volume 2, All Summer Long, and the Beach Boys' Christmas album. In 1966, it was agreed by the group to dismiss Murray from his manager duties. His issues were not disclosed to the public, and sessions for the album continued in his absence. Amid the looming financial insolvency of the Beach Boys, he began to supplement his regular use of marijuana with cocaine. In August, Wilson rejoined the live band for 2 one-off appearances in Honolulu. The shows were recorded for a planned live album that was never finished. The Beach Boys made Wilson's home their primary base of recording operations until 1972. But a little before that, Brian Wilson made arguably the best album of his career and the Beach Boys' career in Pet Sounds. A few of the classic songs on there, such as Wouldn't It Be Nice, God Only Knows, Caroline No, are some of the best songs of all time, and of course, the best Beach Boys songs of all time. Unfortunately, it wasn't a huge success in the US. It barely charted in the top 10 of the Billboard Top 200. And none of the singles were that big of a hit either. It was definitely a disappointment commercially, but critically, it was also mixed at the time. Eventually, a few years later, people began to appreciate for what it is, true art. And following the Pet Sounds album, Brian Wilson worked on his next innovative album called Smile. And it was unlike anything at the time and unlike anything since then, really. But unfortunately, that didn't get released because Brian went off the rails, and the band and the recording studio really didn't see how it'd become profitable for the studio and for the band itself. So they decided to shelve it once Brian started having more mental problems and interfered with the music. But we'll get more into Smile a little later. That's all I'm going to say right now. The band's songwriting output declined substantially in 1968, and Wilson's emotional state declined substantially, leading him to self-medicate with the excessive consumption of food, alcohol, and drugs. Wilson was an active participant in the Beach Boys' early 1970s recording sessions, writing more than an album's worth of material by himself or with collaborators. He recorded a single for the band called Breakaway that was co-written with his father, after which he was rarely in the studio until August of 1969. Much of the material that Wilson recorded from the period remains unreleased and unheard by the public. In May, he revealed to reporters that the group was on the verge of bankruptcy. Due to his poor reputation in the music industry, the Beach Boys struggled to secure a record contract with another label. Wilson's home studio was dismantled in 1972. Wilson opened a short-lived health food store, the Radiant Radish, with his friend Arnie Geller and cousin Steve Korthoff. Sea of Tunes, the band's publishing company that held the rights to their song catalog, was sold to Irving Almo Music. During this period, Wilson attempted to drive his vehicle off a cliff and on another occasion demanded that he be pushed into and buried in a grave that he had dug in his backyard. Wilson and his band signed to Reprise Records, a subsidiary of Warner Brothers. Wilson was deeply affected by the poor commercial response to Sunflower and resumed having minimal contributions to the Beach Boys records. In November of 1970, Wilson joined the live band for 1.5 dates at the Whiskey A Go Go. From late 1971 to early 1972, Wilson collaborated on Spring, the first album by Marilyn Wilson and Diane Rovell's new group, American Spring. In February of 1972, he went to an America gig and held court like a maggot as Danny Hutton scurried about like his court jester during the band's performance. While living in the Dutch house called Flowers and listening repeatedly to Randy Newman's newest album, Sail Away, Wilson was inspired to write a fairy tale, Mount Vernon and Fairway. The group rejected his proposal to include the fairy tale on their next album, Holland. Instead, it was packaged with Holland as a bonus EP. The Beach Boys recorded Carl and the Passions with Blondie Chaplin, and Wilson was so absent that the group had to edit his face into the group portrait. After his father's death in June of 1973, Wilson secluded himself in the chauffeur's quarters of his home. Wilson's family was forced to take control of his financial affairs due to his irresponsible drug expenditures. Wilson spent many nights at Danny Hutton's house fraternizing with colleagues such as Alice Cooper, Harry Nilsson, John Lennon, Ringo Starr, and Keith Moon. Wilson once asked fellow partygoers to introduce him to John Lennon one after another. We're going to jump a few years, but between 1983 and 1986, Dr. Eugene Landy, who came into his life in late 1975, charged about $430,000 annually for Brian Wilson's recording of the Beach Boys, and he labeled it as a comeback for Wilson. Afterward, Wilson stopped working with his bandmates regularly to focus on launching a solo career with Landy's assistance. Brian Wilson's first solo album, Sweet Insanity, was released in 1988. Released in July 1988, it was met with favorable reviews and moderate sales, peaking at number 52 in the US. It included Rio Grande, an 8-minute western suit written in a similar vein to the songs that were supposed to be released on Smile. His debut solo album was overshadowed by the Beach Boys' success of Kokomo, the band's first #1 hit since Good Vibrations, and their first hit that had no involvement from Wilson. In 1989, Wilson and Landy formed the company Brains and Genius, by which time Landy had ceased to be Wilson's therapist on legal record and had surrendered his license to practice psychology in the state of California. In May of 1989, he recorded Daddy's Little Girl for the film She's Out of Control, and in June was among the featured guests on the charity single The Spirit of the Force. Wilson also collaborated with Linda Ronstadt on her single Adios. Wilson's first memoir, Wouldn't It Be Nice, My Own Story, was published in October of 1991. The book prompted defamation lawsuits from Mike Love, Al Jardine, Carl Wilson, and his mother Audrey Wilson. In December of 1994, a jury ruled in favor of Mike Love, who was awarded $5 million and a share of future royalties from Wilson. Wilson wrote and recorded material for a Beach Boys album with Andy Paley in the early to mid-1990s. In the late 1990s, Wilson and Tony Asher rekindled their writing partnership and wrote some songs together. In 1997, Wilson moved to St. Charles, Illinois to work on a solo album project with Joe Thomas. His third album, Imagination, was a Brian Wilson/Joe Thomas album. Wilson co-produced the Beach Boys' 1996 album Stars and Stripes Volume 1 with former professional wrestler Joe Thomas, owner of River North Records and ex-pro wrestler. The Beach Boys twice rejected Wilson's offer to produce an album for them. Wilson's first solo album peaked at number 88 in the US. It was criticized by fans for its mainstream pop sound. Reports suggested that Wilson was being pressured to have a career and exploited by those close to him, including his second wife, Melinda Ledbetter. In August of 1999, Wilson filed a suit against Thomas, seeking damages and a declaration which freed him to work on his next album without involvement from Thomas. The case was settled out of court. Early in 2000, Wilson released his first live album, Live at the Roxy Theater. In March of 2001, Wilson attended a tribute show held in his honor at the Radio City Music Hall in New York, where he sang Heroes and Villains before a public audience for the first time in decades. The tour was poorly attended and financial losses ran up to hundreds of thousands of dollars. Later in the year, he embarked on a series of U.S. concert dates that included the first full live performances of Pet Sound, with Wilson backed by an orchestra. Brian Wilson's fourth solo album, Getting In Over My Head, was released in June 2004. It was the highest chart position of any Beach Boys related album since 1976's 15 Big Ones. It is the highest ever debut for a Beach Boys related album and was later certified platinum. In December of 2005, Arista Records released Wilson's album What I Really Want for Christmas. In 2010, Wilson Reimagine's Gershwin reached number 26 on the Billboard 200. Rumors that the group would reunite for a world tour soon appeared in the music press in 2011. Wilson ultimately agreed to the tour, which lasted until September of 2012. An album, That's Why God Made the Radio, was released in June of 2012. The Smile Sessions was released 1 week later. In October of 2011, the record was followed by In the Key of Disney, which peaked at number 83 in the US. In June 2013, Wilson's website announced that he was recording and self-producing new material with Don Was, Al Jardine, David Marks, former Beach Boy Blondie Chaplin, and guitarist Jeff Beck. In September of 2014, Wilson attended the premiere of the Bill Pohlad-directed biopic of his life, Love and Mercy, at the Toronto International Film Festival. The album reached the U.S. top 30, but critical reaction was mixed due to the adult contemporary arrangements and excessive use of auto-tune. In March of 2016, Wilson embarked on the Pet Sounds 50th Anniversary World Tour, promoted as final performance of the album. In October that year, his second memoir, I Am Brian Wilson, was published. As of June 2021, Wilson is still alive to this day. He is alive and well. Most people didn't think he'd survive. I mean, considering everything he's been through, and I didn't even go through a lot of things. If I told you everything that happened to him, it would be an hour, heck, maybe even a 2-hour video of everything that happened to him. So this was the best I could do to summarize his life. And I just want to say thank you guys for watching. And if you haven't already, like and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content like this. I did a video on what happened to his brother, Carl Wilson. That is in the link in the description below if you haven't watched it, or it'll be up. It'll have a card if you can't find the link. I may do a series in the future of Brian Wilson in a decade. So Brian Wilson in the 60s, 70s, or 80s. I might do that in the future, maybe, because it was hard to summarize his life and career in only a 15-minute video.